Faster than a speeding bullet.
I ran until my muscles burned and my veins pumped battery acid.
More powerful than a locomotive.
An idea is like a virus. Resilient. Highly contagious.
Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the betterhumanology podcast. My name is Jared Moon, and guess who's back? Talon Schwam, what's up, man?
What's up, Jared?
Dude,
how's it going, everyone?
I'm so glad to have you back. If you can't hear it in my voice, I'm smiling.
We can't hear it. You're a robot, remember?
Yeah, I am a robot, but I'm just glad to have you back, man. I love our conversations, and for those who don't know where you've been, I'll just straight up let everyone know. I did mention it in an earlier podcast that you ventured down the journey of becoming a father.
Oh, you spilled the beans.
So congratulations on that. How's fatherhood?
Oh, fatherhood's awesome, as you well know. It's amazing. I mean, gosh, I don't want to get emotional here on the show, but I mean, it's everything you can possibly expect. I mean, I'm already to the point where I'm like, no, please don't grow anymore. You're perfect how you are right now. 1 month is fine. I'll just, change diapers the rest of my life and just look at that cute little face forever. So fatherhood's amazing, but of course, there's been a little bit less time for some things like getting here on the podcast lately. So I'm glad to be back, and I'm excited to get, back to become a better human.
And glad to have you back. Glad we are doing this. All right, so today's episode, we are calling it the Anti-Meditation episode. And the real reason here, it's not anti, as in we are against meditation, because what was it, episode number 3 or something like that?
Yeah.
A long time ago, we did a meditation experiment. Some listeners didn't like it because they accused us of being Buddhists, and it was just a fun little time.
Back in the old days.
That was back in the day.
Sure.
I mean, I do feel like meditation is it's super trendy.
It is, absolutely.
It's entering every space, and I don't think that's a bad thing, but I always like to just keep an eye on things when they do become trendy. And I do feel like meditation's got super trendy, and so I want to kind of go against the grain here and offer up a different solution to meditation, and that's thinking. And so that's what this podcast is about. We really want to dive in here and just talk about, as opposed to, meditation is good. It has a lot of benefits, and we discuss all that in the meditation episode, mindfulness and awareness, living in the now. But how often do you actually sit down and proactively think? And I'm going to ask that to you, Talon. How often do you actually do that right now?
Oh, gosh. So for me, yeah, I mean, definitely don't want to take away anything from meditation, but very often. I mean, this is as much as I can. I guess probably a lot less often nowadays, like I was talking about. Now that I'm a dad, it's a struggle, I think, to get some of that time where you're not bothered by, a task or some other conversation that's going on or just something else that's in your life. You just have that time to sit there and think. Probably, I would have said all the time before, but now it's probably, less than an hour a day.
That's huge, man. So I do want to throw a clarification out there for the listeners. So,
yeah, I'm pretty big into this. This is like this is my thing. I love to think, right?
His wheelhouse, if you will. So, I mean, technically speaking, everyone's always thinking, and you're always talking to yourself, and
right.
Even when you're sleeping, you're thinking. So thinking's always going on. But I'm not talking about a lot of the, just for clarification, a lot of the autopilot thinking, because you might be driving to work and you're like, yeah, I'm thinking about stuff all the time. I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. Of course you are. You're live. And, you're thinking. But that is kind of what I like to label as just kind of reactive thinking. It's not really reflecting and being introspective or really, concentrating for long periods of time, which I don't know many people other than you who actually do this on a regular basis. They're just like, they have their thinking chair and they're going to go sit down and dwell for a little bit, on something. It's kind of rare. And so that's what I want to challenge the listeners to do today is get some proactive thinking done. So what do you think when you think proactive thinking? What is that when you just think of this anti-meditation that we're we're talking about. What do you think of?
Well, probably the reason I sound, I don't know, hopefully it's not a little pretentious, is because I think I liken it a little bit to like when we talked about the gratitude journal, where you're actively, like you just said, thinking about, something. Instead of trying to clear your mind, you're really kind of, prompting your mind. And so, for me, it's more about, trying to find something that I really enjoy to think about, because like you said, we spend so much time with that autopilot, just like, okay, what I need to do next here? What am I going to do when I get there? While you're driving, you're thinking about just trying to operate the car correctly, or what's, on the radio station. There's so many other things going on that you like you said, you're not really taking that time to just sit there and, focus on ideas. So for me, it's more about trying to put, topics into your head about what you want to think about, like what your mind gravitates towards on its own. And I think when you do that, I think we'll talk about that here in a little bit, but when you do that, you're automatically driven to think about more of your dreams and your goals and maybe some of those bigger, overarching problems that you have. And then, problem solving kind of ensues afterward.
Yeah, and I think, well let's go into the some of our suggestions in a second. I want to say that I think, and I actually did this today before the podcast, I had like a little thinking session, and it's almost like meditation. So like you set aside your 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever you have, and you just kind of focus on one thing, clear all the distractions out of there, and it's not sitting there letting your mind run wild. That would be true anti-meditation. But it's focusing, and a lot of people can't do that for very long on one thing. So you might have to start in shorter segments. But what I think it helps people do a lot, and what it's helped me do, just having done it recently since we brought this idea up to each other several weeks ago, is I think that it helps you be a better decision maker, which I think is huge.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of people aren't very good decision makers. They kind of waffle. They don't want to offend someone, so they just won't really tell them what the decision is. If it's not, like, it could be a small...
Or it takes them too long. You're right.
Yeah, like, it could be a small decision. It's like, where do you want to eat? I mean, I'm sure everyone has run into that. Well, just make a freaking decision. Just, like, say it. And if there's any disagreement, okay, move on to the next one. Making decisions should be, just a part of your daily process. But I also think it helps you reduce procrastination. Because I know that if I have something to do, and if I just have it, like, the big thing on my to-do list for that day, but I didn't really think about it or how much work that was actually going to be or detail the process or anything like that, I am way more inclined to procrastinate, and I've figured it out. It's because I haven't fully thought through what I need to do to accomplish that. So it's really helped me procrastinate less because I can break a big goal up into a lot of smaller chunks. And so I think it has a lot of benefit here. And so let's dive into your suggestion, then I'll give mine on how to do one of these like thinking sessions or what you should focus on during the process.
Yeah, so I brought it up a second ago, but what you kind of outlined. So yeah, set aside just like you would for meditation, like a 15-minute block is kind of what I look for. And for me, I think you want to try and find the same kind of environment. Like you want to find like a kind of quiet. I wouldn't say dark. I'd probably say more of a brighter room. So you don't want to fall asleep, because oftentimes when you're really trying to think about something, you start thinking about problems. I think it can spiral off sometimes, and you don't want to make sure that doesn't happen. So, try to kind of a secluded place where you can really just focus and think and not be bothered by outside things. And then, think about what comes to you, what comes to you first, what you want to think about, what's enjoyable to think about, what feels good to think about. You really want to try and stay away from worrying or what, things that you need to do. Kind of those thoughts that come to you before you fall asleep, when you can't sleep and you're just up rolling, toss and turn in the bed, and you're like, gosh, as soon as I get up, I need to do this. Maybe I should even get up now because I need to do it so bad. Well, you need to stay away from those things. Think about, what is pleasurable to think about. And I think you'll gradually, come to those goals and those dreams. And sometimes, if you don't get to those and you're just doing a little bit of free thinking on some of your own passion projects, that's not bad either. It doesn't always have to be growth mindset involved. So I don't know. What do you think, Jared?
Very similar, man. I think that these thinking sessions need to be. I do think they need to be incredibly proactive, not reactive thinking, which I kind of talked about. Like, don't. If you were to set aside 15 minutes to do this today, don't use that time to make your grocery list and all this other crap. That's just setting aside time for yourself. I recommend really starting off going shorter because, like I said, it's really hard to concentrate for a long period of time. Especially, we've been conditioned as human beings with advertisements, iPhones, laptops, and TV, and driving down the road to not focus on things for very long. So it's a really challenging thing to do. So just sit down and maybe it's 5 minutes your first time, and only think about one thing. Maybe it's a problem you've been putting off, or maybe it's something more like what you said, Talon, like a passion project or dream or goal that you kind of want to start focusing on a little bit more in your free time.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's, going down a little bit more into my realm, maybe it's a fitness goal that you have and you've never actually thought about what it's going to take to achieve that. And you don't have to write the whole plan or workout yourself, but maybe you're like, I want to lose 30 pounds, but I've never sat my ass down and actually thought about, who I need to hire, what foods I need to eat, what research I need to do or whatever to achieve that goal. And so I think sitting down and really mapping out a process to figure out, I think for most people at first, figuring out a problem or, really, really in detail laying out a goal. I think that should be your goal the first time. Yeah, maybe start in the 5 to 7 minute time frame, and don't let your brain deviate into other directions. And a good way to do that is to have, a piece of paper and a pen. I think you can just sit there and think. I know writing is not thinking, but I'm not talking about like sit there and write the whole time, but just kind of, if you do think of a solution or whatever, and you are thinking about a problem, just you got to have somewhere to jot down the solution. And I think
that's a great point, because you're gonna come to some fantastic ideas, some fantastic conclusions during this time. The power of the human brain is so incredible that when you spend this short few minutes really trying to activate it and use it for what your body wants it to do, for what you really feel like you want to accomplish and to change, the thoughts that are going to come to you are going to be noteworthy. You're going to want to write them down because they're going to be that much more thought out than the thoughts that you usually have. And I'm sorry to cut you off, because I feel like it's so important, though, like what we're talking about here when it comes to reaching goals or dreams, because so many of us all throughout our lives have had like a bucket list or, whatever. We've had back in our head, I've always wanted to write a book or start a podcast or, run a mile or run 10 miles or finish a marathon or whatever it is. No matter how low or how big the goal is, a lot of us just have it in our head bouncing around, but we don't actually ever do anything with it. Well, there's all kinds of books out there, and write down your goals and this. And Jared's not saying that. What we're saying is this is how it starts. This is how it begins, is you got to flesh it out with your mind first before you can even really start putting it all down and working through the problem to get it accomplished or get that goal achieved. So this is really the beginning right here, is just using your brain so that those problem solving steps can happen thereafter.
Yeah. And I think, I wrote about this a long time ago, and I think it kind of goes in part with this, as far as if you were trying to solve a problem, is sitting down like with a piece of paper and you have the problem like listed at the top of the piece of paper.
Yep.
And then you have to come up with 100 solutions to that problem. So number on your paper 1 through 100, and they're going to be, some of them are going to be ridiculous, like crazy, but any possible solution to the problem you have. But what's crazy, if you actually do this exercise with anything that you're trying to solve, the solutions you end up coming up with, and if you put a time cap on it, be like, I have to come up with 130 minutes or whatever, are going to be crazy. And you might actually surprise yourself. But it's a thinking exercise, and a lot of people don't do this stuff. And going back to the other podcast episode we did, what was that called, where we had the brain training? Do you remember the exact exercise where we had to do the up, down, left,
neuroplasticity. Right?
Yeah, the neuroplasticity training. We're doing stuff like that, man, just to exercise your brain alone.
Yeah.
That's kind of what this is. It's actually using your brain in a proactive way, as opposed to just put it on autopilot and going through life, which is easy to do. It really is easy to do, to just kind of autopilot your life. Here's work, here's workout, here's bed, here's wake up, here's breakfast. That's
Yep.
easy to do. But I actually did read another article when I was researching this, and it said that highly successful people actually do set time aside to think at least once per week. And I thought that was very interesting. They didn't link to any further research that I could, dig into, but they is a pretty trusted source, and so I'm very interested to know what that looks like for most people. But I know my Mondays have become. That's what I do for the first
thinking day.
Not the whole day, but the beginning of the day for sure. The first hour or so. That's all I do is just have a thinking then / planning session, just to kind of.
Is that because it's Monday? You want to kind of prepare yourself for the week?
Well, it kind of depends. I mean, it might not happen every Monday if I have a big project, like just coming up off the book launch. That I did that, like I did a planning session for once, basically for the full month of May, and then I knew what I had to do every day, and then I didn't do another planning session. But now that that's over, I just recently did another one that will take me through, the next 2 weeks at least or so. So that's just how I work, and it goes into all aspects. So that's a thinking session.
So we should talk about how it can help. Really, I know we talked a little bit about all the different benefits, but I think there are some more concrete points that we have to pass on, right?
Yeah, man. So one of the things I mentioned, reducing procrastination, aids in decision making, and then also resistance reduction is one of the things that I wrote down. Because if anyone's read the book out there, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, it's a really good book. Just talks about, and everyone knows what resistance is, even if you've never heard it. Resistance is basically just, if you have something to achieve, for some reason, you don't want to do it. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, it does not matter. If it's going to move you any inch towards success, whether that's in fitness, whether that's in business, whether that's in your education, it doesn't matter. There's going to be something that makes you not want to do that, and it's kind of a phenomenon, but that's what we call resistance. But I think if you have one of these thinking sessions, it can really reduce that resistance, because you can break it up into such tiny micro goals that you can actually start achieving what you're after. What are some added benefits you have?
Well, I think it also increases perspective. I didn't have this one down, but based on what you're talking about too, is you start looking at the situation from a broader view, from a broader scope, and you start seeing some of those smaller goals come to you just on their own. Those smaller little goals, like, okay, well, I see the big picture, and this is what I need to do to reach it. And you'd accomplish those smaller goals, but they really look more like stepping stones in the big picture because you spent that time fleshing out the idea already. But for me, some of the biggest ones I have is it just really helps you conceptualize. And I know we've probably talked around this in several different ways, just conceptualize the current situation, a problem, and flesh out a goal. And that's obvious, right? Because you're taking more time to think about, whatever it is you're thinking about, so you're going to know the different angles. I know Einstein was famous for saying that if he had an hour to solve a problem, he'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. And so, obviously, one of our best thinkers, right, probably of human history. But I think it fits right in what we're talking about. Is you really have to understand well whatever you're going to think about, whatever you're going to try and solve, whatever you're going to try and accomplish first, before even trying to set those goals down and start taking steps towards them. And so, I really feel like with what we're talking about today, it's not just. I feel like if you use this anti-meditation technique and you were able to solve a problem one time, then you probably got some benefit out of the podcast, and you got that problem solved, and it was great. But what we're teaching here, this anti-meditation technique, I feel like is more like teaching the man to fish rather than just giving him here, you solved one problem, fish, already handing it over to him. Because I feel like if you make this a habit, this is something that makes you better in the long run, over and over, not just problem solving for that one specific event, but learning how to problem solve, for all types of situations better. Because you're thinking more creatively, you're thinking more in depth, and you're just using your mind just to problem solve more often. So that kind of fits in that neuroplasticity kind of mindset.
And I wanted to take some counterpoints here, because I do know some meditation, and I mentioned this at the beginning, but meditation is supposed to make you mindful, aware, kind of
Right.
clear your mind. So if you were to like actually sit down and do the opposite of that, which I jokingly said don't, that's true anti-meditation, is just to let your brain go crazy, what I call right before I go to sleep. If you do that on purpose, then that doesn't serve as much of a purpose. So it does have to be concentration. But the main counterpoint I want to bring up is where do we draw the line between, because you can go, if you're going down the problem solving route, you can go thinking and then decision maker, or you can become overthinker, analysis paralysis. So where do we draw the line on the analysis paralysis and inaction? Not taking action because you're like, you know what, I didn't find the solution to that problem today. I'll save that for tomorrow's thinking session. If you get caught in that rut, then you're also kind of backpedaling. So what are your thoughts on that?
That's tough because, as a prior intel guy, it's hard. It's almost like you can never have too much analysis, right? You can never have too much critical thinking on a subject. But you're right. I mean, there is too much because the problem becomes the time. So I feel like it's tough. Without help in the situation, you're on your own. You're on your own to with your mind. Right. So you have to manage it all on your own. And so as an individual, I feel like, probably at first, maybe you need to just limit it to certain sessions. Like, you know what, maybe I don't need to go any longer than 5 of these little set aside 10 to 15, whatever, 7-minute sessions on this topic before I need to take action. Because if not, then, you like you said, you run the risk of creating paralysis basically just by spending so much time thinking. But it's still the process of thinking in depth like this is beneficial, I will say, even if it is a little over the top, or you are becoming a little bit of an overanalyzer. You're probably still finding out insights and developing skills that are going to help you and be better than you were before.
And the reason I bring that up is because I know personally, I don't necessarily think I'm an overthinker, but I do think that I am a planner. And,
definitely.
And I caught myself early on in my professional career, let's call it, even in the Air Force or when it comes to fitness, that I could get so caught up in just having the most badass plan, that
right.
It would prevent me from doing. I'd be like, okay, dude, you spent like most of the day planning. Like you didn't actually get anything done, even though you have a really concrete plan. I mean, sometimes it might take an entire day to create like an awesome plan, as long as action starts the next day. But I've found that I've gotten in those ruts before, and I have to always be aware of what I'm doing, that I'm not getting in. It's like, wow, you just planned stuff all week. You didn't actually take any action on anything. You just planned a bunch of crap and didn't do anything. So that's why I bring it up, is because I know personally I do have a tendency to sit there and plan, but then you have to take action. So for me, setting, like you mentioned, some sort of time limit, time cap, or, even if you get, like, having a rule for yourself, like, even if I feel like I have 80% of the solution, just go ahead and start taking action, even if it's not perfect, because nothing's ever going to be perfect. So taking action with an imperfect plan is going to be okay.
That's true. Yeah. Be a doer, not a planner.
So do you have that Einstein quote again? What did Einstein?
Yeah. He said, so if he's got an hour to solve a problem, he's going to spend 55 of the minutes in that hour to think about the problem before he even thinks about any solutions.
And that reminds me, I think it was Abraham Lincoln quote. I'm going to probably jack it up, but something like, very similar. It's like, if I had, 60 minutes to cut down a tree or something like that, I would spend 50 minutes sharpening the axe. Something. It's a little bit different because Einstein's focusing on the problem, and Lincoln was focusing on sharpening the axe, which is just, making sure that you're ready and prepared to do what you need to do. But
he was also just really inept at sharpening. It shouldn't take 50 minutes to sharpen an axe.
Just a little shot to the president there. Okay, another quote I have for you. Patton, he said, if everyone is thinking alike, then someone isn't thinking.
Well,
I think that falls more in line with Einstein, because you need to think outside the box if you're going to do a thinking session. If you're going to devote time to sit down there and think, if everything you have, say you created 5 solutions to a problem and you kind of already had those jotted down in your head before you started the session,
right?
then I would say that you're doing it wrong. You need to come up with some crazy ass stuff off the wall just to at least challenge your brain and like think of something else. It's gonna help you grow. It's gonna sharpen the axe, so to speak, make you a better human.
See, I think this is kind of some chicken before the egg stuff. So I feel like to come up with those out of the box solutions and ideas, you have to have already started this process of thinking critically. Like you have to. This has to be something that you do often, that you enjoy doing, that you take time already to think critically on things before you can start coming up with out of the box ideas. I mean, I love you need to start thinking of some crazy shit. You don't want to waste your time. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself into certain ideas, because that's true. You're absolutely right that people shouldn't be writing down ideas and thinking, okay, I'll just think about this one idea over and over and just wasting their damn time. You know,
right?
They absolutely need to be trying to come up with things that the general public, general people don't think of already. You want to try and think of different solutions others haven't thought of. That's what makes you more dynamic. So you're absolutely right. But this is the process that does that on its own. Once you start doing this, you'll start thinking on those different angles and seeing things differently.
And I would say it could just be a proposed solution, but not just to challenge yourself. So like today I'm going to have one off the wall suggestion, and it may in no way, shape or form be the action that you're going to take, but at least you challenge yourself to do something, because some solutions are easy. If you were going to set some sort of financial goal to save more money, to meet your investing goals, there's not a lot of off-the-wall shit that's going on there. You either don't have the money to invest and you need to make more money to invest, so then your solutions then become, how can I make more money? And most of those would be pretty structured, except for you could have one crazy off-the-wall, like, I'm going to sell my toenail clippings to... I don't know, something.
It's definitely not going to start a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something crazy. So I think that could be a bad off the wall decision there to start a podcast.
I think our conversation, even though it's gone off a little bit on a tiny tangent, I feel like it drives right back to my kind of next thing that I really want to talk about with this. We probably shouldn't have called it anti-meditation anyway, but with this technique, is that it boosts creativity. So yeah, like we're talking about, it helps you think outside the box over and over, over the long run. But I feel like it helps you develop that imagination. Did you do this kind of thing when you were a kid? Did you sit around and think?
Not that I can remember. I just kind of lived life, had fun.
Really, I'm disappointed. I kind of set this up.
I've always kind of thought I was a thinker, but I don't know. I can't remember like being a super structured kid and like having a thinking time. Yeah, I'm guessing you did.
I don't know. I wasn't structured, that's for sure. You know me, but I feel like so many of my memories, I think back to like laying in the grass and what I was thinking about. I have more memories of thoughts. It's like thought sessions almost, and just like almost having storylines play out in my head and just my imagination running more so than I think playing memories.
There's a certain version of me who would have considered this a huge waste of time because you weren't taking action. Different version of me, even probably just a few years ago, I'd have been like, what, you're going to sit around and do nothing? That's what I call this session, the do nothing session for 20 minutes. You are being, you are not being productive, so therefore you're wrong. But, I've matured, I've grown older and wiser, I hope, so I see a lot of value in stuff like this now.
Well, I just think that, the more aware you become of yourself, the world around you, the more likely you are to find just those like unique angles, and I think a new perspective, and I feel like the world kind of comes a little bit brighter to you and is a little bit more inspirational, and that's kind of part of the creativity too, is you develop that imagination and that you're inspired by your ability to almost it's almost like visualization. It's like imagination is like adult. It's like kids' version of adult visualization. I feel like it can be. I feel like it's the same skills, and I feel like if you do this properly and you kind of develop that imagination back, kind of hopefully. I mean, maybe most of us had a little bit more than Jarredd did as a kid, but you kind of build it back up. And I think you are that much more able to see that end goal. And I think you feel that much more positive about the whole process and about getting to where you want to go. because you believe a little bit more into it, because you've had these kind of deep creative thoughts about, what you want to do.
Yeah, man. And to me, this combines a lot of things that we've talked about. So we have talked about meditation, and this is, in a sense, could be considered something like that, in my opinion, because you are having to focus on
similar,
one idea.
right? Yeah.
So we've talked about that. We've talked about having a morning routine, so maybe this becomes part of your morning routine. We've talked about visualization, and that's something you just brought up. And we brought up the book Think and Grow Rich, and how that entire method is laid out in that book, how they think that you should visualize and write down your goals and everything like that.
Yep.
So I feel like this kind of just takes a lot of that and brings it in there. And the reason I kind of like the thinking is because I've done a lot of the meditation stuff, and I feel like it helps me when I am kind of just overworked and stressed out, and my mind just like can't slow down.
Right.
But I do often find myself in a better place than that, where I'm not incredibly overworked or stressed, and sometimes I'm not trying to achieve some sort of like enlightenment. Like meditation for me is not a religious thing. It's an exercise of the mind, and that's it. So I'm not like going down to South America to find myself or anything like that. That's not why I do any of this stuff. I'm just trying to sharpen the axe, if you will, make my mind better. And I think that this does the same thing. So I think having a good balance between the two is really really beneficial.
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, that was my last point about it, was like, 'cause I didn't want to bash, meditation too much, because I feel like we both talked about it. We both approved it. Meditation's got good benefits, but I feel like this can relax you as well as kind of give you that kind of fulfilled feeling that meditation gives you, and that's how it feels like. I feel like it overlaps. Is that on the everyday kind of spectrum, most of us are just too busy. Our brain is just occupado. It's just gone. It's busy thinking about everything else what we talked about earlier, and just all the different life stressors and things. But taking this time, setting it aside to be on your own and think about what you want to think about, does the same kind of effects, similar types of effects that meditation does. Because I know the feels. I know what it is to not have a chance to a moment to really think on your own, or just have a second of quiet, of peace, really to put some thoughts together. So once you do those, though, you have some of those same benefits. That's what I've been doing for the last few weeks since we've talked about it. And you find that kind of serenity that you find, the same kind of serenity that you find when you meditate, because you have that quietness, and then afterwards you've had these growth building, probably so these new ideas, these thoughts flood into you, and so now you feel you're that much more fulfilled about whatever challenge or goal or whatever is coming up, because you're just that much more prepared for it. Some of the ins and outs better.
I think you've said it all, man.
I think we've said about as much as we can.
As much
right?
as we can. Sharpen the axe. Sit down. Think for 5 solid minutes today about one thing.
Don't be like Abe. Don't be like Abe.
Or be like Abe.
No, it takes 50 minutes to sharpen that axe.
Yeah, but it makes perfect sense, right? It's like...
Yeah, I mean, maybe over the course of a day.
All right, guys, that's this episode. Thanks for tuning into the Better Humanology podcast. If you like this episode and want to hear us talk about some more crazy stuff, be sure to subscribe on iTunes. And if you got a moment, leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review. It really helps the show out, and we would be forever grateful. All right, guys.
Thanks.
your best. Losers always whine about their best.